Listen, if you're looking for the video that's going to show you how to sculpt your booty in 30 days at home or give yourself a salon-worthy haircut at home, this is not the video for you. But if you're looking to truly glow up in quarantine, then stay tuned. Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I wanted to chat with you guys about the quarantine glow up trend. Now, from what I've seen on social media and from talking to people in my own life, it looks like there's this expectation that once social distancing has been lifted and we can have somewhat more normal in-person interactions, that we're all gonna emerge from our isolation like 10 times hotter, and our skin is gonna be clear, and our hair is gonna be shinier, and our bodies are gonna be more tight and toned. Now, don't get me wrong, I do think that these are all healthy and good goals to work towards. So if you wanna jump on that quarantine glow up trend, then you do you, girl or guy. But I do want to point out that all of these goals are related to external improvements. And external improvements can only go so far in a true glow up and truly improving as a person. You could eat all the broccoli in the world and work out for an hour a day every day, but if you don't also spend extra time to tend to your mind and your heart, then none of that will matter. The most beautiful people are glowing from the inside out, because true self-improvement happens from the inside out. And I will admit, true self-improvement isn't always easy, but I promise you that the gains that you will get from it will last you so much longer and will be so much more valuable than anything you could ever get from a face mask or a 10-minute ab workout. So I've tried to make it a little bit easier for you guys, and I've created a list of 9 activities that you can get started to glow up in quarantine. So let's dive right in. The first quarantine glow up activity is a values exercise, and it looks like a lot of people in all of their new free time have been confronted with a lot of hard questions like, who do I want to be? What's really most important to me? How do I want to make an impact on the world? And these kind of questions can be quite overwhelming, and it can be hard to know where to start to find answers. So for those of you that are looking for your answers, I highly encourage you to try out this values exercise. Before we get into how to do the exercise, let's define a value. A value is a guiding principle in your life. It represents what's most important to you, and you'll usually plan out your life and make decisions based on this value. And some examples of values can be honesty, kindness, justice. There are hundreds of values out there, and the cool thing is you get to choose which values you believe in most. Everyone will have a slightly different set of values, but no one can choose your personal values but you. That's why they're called personal values and not your parents' values or your boss's values or society's values. And it's important to define your own values, because if you don't decide for yourself, other people will decide for you. And when you're living according to your own values, you're more likely to feel good. And when you're living according to someone else's, you're more likely to feel worse. So that's what the values exercise is for, to help you define your own values. So how the exercise works is you'll print out a list of values, and you can find a bunch of these online just by Googling values exercise, and I'll leave the one that I used in the description. But you'll start cutting out these values and going through each one and setting aside the ones that are most important to you into your keep pile. And don't worry if you feel like your keep pile is getting too big, and try not to overthink it. Just if you feel like a value is important to you, then keep it. And once you have your keep pile, separate it into 5 smaller groups, where the words in each group all relate to each other. And try not to overthink this one again. If you feel like one value is even remotely related to another one, group them together. And once you have your 5 groups, look at each one and pick one word from each group that describes the entire group. And once you've done that, you have your top 5 personal values. And if you guys were curious, mine were freedom, relationships, making a difference, mindfulness, and growth. And I'd love to hear what your results were, so definitely comment down below what are your top 5 personal values. The second activity is to declutter your mind. A lot of people in quarantine have been taking the time to declutter their space, which is great, but they also forget that it is just as important, if not more important, to declutter your mind. We think up to 60,000 thoughts a day, and up to 80% of them are negative. That's a lot of mental clutter, and just like physical clutter in our space, mental clutter can really slow us down and hold us back. And some of you might be wondering, how exactly do I declutter my mind? Good question. I didn't learn until recently how to do this properly, and I learned from an episode of one of my favorite podcasts, Optimal Relationships Daily, and I'll link the episode in the description if you guys are interested in learning more. But here are my main takeaways from the episode. Whenever you catch yourself having a negative thought, try to pause, write the thought down, and ask yourself these 3 questions. Is the thought true? How do I feel when I believe this thought? How do I feel without this thought? Now try to replace that thought with the opposite thought and find 2 pieces of evidence to support it. And decluttering your thoughts is kind of like decluttering your closet, Marie Kondo style. If a thought doesn't spark joy, throw it in the discard pile and replace it with a thought that does spark joy and make you feel confident. Number 3 is to evaluate your self-talk. The way you talk to yourself is everything because it's always there with you. It's kind of like having a roommate that also happens to follow you around everywhere. But the cool thing is, unlike with a real roommate, we get to choose how we want this roommate to talk to us. So we want to make sure that we're choosing a positive roommate that talks to us in uplifting ways. And how we can evaluate our self-talk is to look at it from a third-person perspective instead of being the one listening to it all the time. And we can do this by giving our self-talk a character. Mine is named Jenna, and some days Jenna is really mean to me. She'll tell me things like how I'm not doing good enough, how I should be contributing more to society, how I'm so lazy. And on those days, I've had to teach myself how to not listen to her and politely tell her no thank you. In my mind, I'll literally think things like, oh, there goes Jenna again. Not today, Jenna. Thanks, Jenna girl, but I'm choosing not to listen to you right now. And I'm not gonna lie, it does make me feel a little crazy sometimes, but it does help me to remember that just like we can choose the people that we surround ourselves with, we can also choose how we talk to ourselves. So make sure that you're talking to yourself in the same way that you would want the people that you surround yourself with to talk to you. The 4th activity is to explore your creativity. Now, as someone who is not artistically inclined whatsoever, I can't even draw an apple, I used to get really discouraged by the word creativity. But then I read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, and it completely changed my outlook on creativity. So now I see creativity as the process of creating anything. It doesn't have to be painting or drawing or making music. It can be cooking or baking or taking care of plants or decorating your apartment. We all have the capacity to create, and we all have a creative outlet that vibes best with our unique skills and talents. So why not take this time and find the outlet that works best for you? And some of you might be wondering, where do I even start to try to find my outlet? Well, a good place to start is to think about what activities you enjoyed doing as a kid. Maybe you enjoyed journaling, so now you can try writing a blog. Or maybe you enjoyed playing around with your parents' camera, and now you might want to try out photography or videography. So play around, experiment, and who knows, this might be the start of something really significant in your life. Number 5 is to read a good old personal development book. I owe the person I am today to some of the personal development books that I've read. And if you think about it, reading a personal development book is like learning all of the wisdom that one person has gained in their entire lifetime in a matter of weeks, depending on how fast you read. If you think about it this way, reading is one of the fastest and most effective ways that we can learn and grow and expand our minds. So why not take advantage of this time and do some reading so we can emerge into the new world as more knowledgeable and wiser and all around better people. I'll be doing a video soon on the books that have changed my life, but I'll give you guys one recommendation to start off with, which honestly should be required reading, and that's Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I know some people who have told me they're not really big readers, but they started reading this book and they couldn't put it down. It's only 20 pages, so there's really no excuse, and the lessons that you will gain from this book will change your life for the better, I promise. And if reading isn't really your thing, try a podcast. Podcasts are something that I wish I discovered a way long time ago, because once I started listening to them, I found that my rate of learning just skyrocketed. And I also discovered that I retain information a lot better from listening as opposed to reading. One of my favorite things about podcasts is how it allows me to multitask. So I love putting one on when I'm just doing stuff around the house, like cleaning or cooking, or one of my favorite quarantine activities I've picked up is going for a walk while listening to a podcast, because it allows me to exercise my body and my brain at the same time, and I feel super productive doing it. And some podcast episodes have literally changed me as a person, and for those episodes I like to go back and take notes so that I can really solidify my learning and have the notes as reminders in the future. And some of my favorite podcasts include On Purpose by Shetty, The School of Life with Lewis Howes, How to Fail by Elizabeth Day, and Unlocking Us with Brene Brown, and a couple others that I will list in the description as well. But I'm always on the hunt for new podcasts, so if you have any recommendations for me, then definitely leave them in the comments. Number 7 is to take an online course. Guys, learning is so much more enjoyable when you're not doing it under the constant pressure and high expectations that's inherent to educational institutions. Once I graduated university and I finally had time to start learning things on my own, and I didn't have to worry about memorizing everything perfectly for a final exam, I got to choose the topics that I wanted to learn, I got to choose the pace to learn them at. That's when learning truly started to become enjoyable for me. And honestly, the stuff I've learned in online courses on platforms like Udemy or Skillshare, or even created by other content creators, have been more useful and practical than anything that I've learned in a formal learning environment. So I highly encourage you guys to explore a bunch of different topics. You can learn anything online now and see what really sparks your interest, and take this time to become a more knowledgeable and skilled and well-rounded person. And the best part is, a lot of these courses are free, so there's really no excuse to not do one, especially for courses on African American history. And I'm currently working through one right now on Yale's online open course platform, and I would highly recommend it, so I'll leave it in the description as well so you guys can go check that one out. Number 8 is nurture your relationships. Let's talk about loneliness. Loneliness was a pandemic way before COVID, and there have been studies to show that 30% of millennials feel lonely often or all of the time. And that was without a pandemic forcing us to socially distance. So now, on top of the anxiety and impending doom that's inherent to a pandemic, we don't need to feel lonely on top of that too. So that's why it is so key that we still keep in touch with people. But not just anyone, because we all know we were only forcing ourselves to spend time with certain people. But specifically, the people that radiate positive energy in our lives and whose company make us feel good. And in having to socially distance ourselves from all these amazing people for the past few months, I think it's safe to say that a lot of us are really realizing just how important our close relationships really are to us. And it's more important now than ever to put effort into these relationships to make sure that they'll be just as strong, if not stronger, once all of this is over. And the key to maintaining relationships despite a physical distance is to make a habit out of it. Maybe if you haven't heard from someone in a certain amount of time, make it a habit to be the first one to reach out first. Or maybe you and your friends and family have a set time in the week that you guys catch up or video call. Or maybe you want to take it to the next level and you challenge yourself to push past the small talk and really open up to someone. Because it is in that vulnerability where a relationship can really grow and where we can feel seen and understood, and where our social needs can be truly met, and where the pandemic of loneliness can be healed. And the last quarantine glow up activity is to ask yourself, how do I want my life to look like when I go back? I feel like everyone is in such a hurry for things to go back to normal and to just dive right back into how things used to be. But I feel like if we did that, we'd be missing out on the greatest opportunity that this time has presented to us, which is to really look at how we were spending our time before and ask ourselves, was I happy with how I was spending my time? Was I happy with the company I chose to spend that time with? Am I really excited to go back to my job? And now that we've been forced to put everything on hold, we have the time and mental space where we can ask ourselves these questions and really evaluate how we truly felt about how we were living our lives before, and what parts we're actually looking forward to going back to, and what parts we're low-key dreading going back to, and what parts might have been missing before. And I also don't want to imply that I think this is easy, because it is not. It can feel like one of the hardest things. So to make it a little bit easier, it definitely helps to look back on the results from your values exercise and think about, was I living in alignment with these values in my pre-pandemic life? And if you find that you weren't living in alignment with some of them, that's totally okay. We've been granted so much time now to make the adjustments that we need to make, and we can really think about what areas we need to put more or less focus on, or who we were only spending time with because we felt forced to, and who we actually want to be spending our time with. I feel like this time is almost like the detox we all needed to put our lives back on track and get rid of all the junk that we don't need, so we're only left with what's most important to us. And we can start this detox by asking ourselves that question: how do I want my life to look when I go back? So those are my tips for today. Thank you so much for watching. I wish you all the best in your quarantine glow up, and I can't wait for all of us to re-emerge into the world as better versions of ourselves. But please remember that there is no right or wrong way to do this. It's whatever feels best for you. So please remember to share this video with a friend you think might benefit from it, and I will see you all next Sunday. Until next time, stay healthy and stay safe. Bye.
It's not for me to say.